Thanks for coming to this webinar this evening. It's about settled status, the EU settlement scheme. It's being recorded, so if anyone's got any issues around that, then maybe be aware of like what you're putting in chat or what you're saying. But yeah, I just thought I'd mention that at the top. To give a bit of context to the speakers, in 2016, the Vote Leave campaign, which are now in government, promised there will be no change for EU citizens already in the UK. They will be automatically granted indefinite leave to remain. But as with a lot of things they said, they've not actually turned out to be accurate. We have the EU settlement scheme, and I knew some stuff about it, but I've been learning a lot more recently from the 3 million unsettled, and I found it really, really interesting to learn about the groups with the different vulnerabilities and the work they're doing. So I think you'll find this really interesting if you know about some of their work, and if you know about some, I hope you'll learn a bit more and also learn about our campaigns that the pro-EU groups are running, and that you can hopefully get involved with supporting those and get involved with those. We have at the top Christina Tegelo from Settled. Settled is a charity that reaches out to EU citizens who are at risk of losing the right to live and work in the UK after Brexit. Following her will be Sally Gilmour, who is with Manchester for Europe and has been working with Settled on a campaign for elderly and carers primarily. Then Mark Vaughan will be speaking on behalf of the 3 million and introducing the Drop the Letter campaign, if you're not familiar with that, which is aimed at local councils. Then, yeah, the 3 million, that's a grassroots organisation of EU citizens living in the UK. And then following Mark will be Edmund Sides, Swansea for Europe, who will be primarily discussing the Act Now for Settled Status campaign, which Swansea and Manchester for Europe have been running over the past month, and which will continue. That will be followed by any questions. Any questions you have, feel free to drop them in the chat, and then people will answer those at the end. So now I would like to hand over to Christina.
Thank you very much, Joe, and hello to everyone, and thanks for the invite. I'm going to share some slides, and please do let me know if you can see them. Are you seeing them okay?
Yes.
Good.
Yeah.
Okay, just to give you an introduction of Settled. Settled is a charity that was founded in 2019, July 2019, by an active group of EU citizens. Most of us were all from the 3 million. And the idea is that we were working already informing people on the EU settlement scheme, and before that on the permanent residence card, so documents that would allow to prove the immigration status. But we realized that a lot more should have been done. There were vulnerable groups that we needed to reach. So having a charity that was working just on that would allow us to have the ability of reaching out to more people. Just to give you an idea, I've got a couple of slides that explain where we are at the moment. On the 31st of December 2020, sorry, on the 31st of December 2020, the UK left the European Union, and before Brexit has come in all effect, the EU laws do not come to force into the UK any longer, and any documents that the EU citizens had that were granted under the EU laws have no sorry, it keeps receiving this. They haven't got any value now. So from the 31st of December 2020, EU citizens that comes into the UK for the first time will have to come with the new immigration system. But those who are already here, those who arrived before the 31st of December 2020, they were living here before, they will need to register to a new scheme, which is called the EU settlement scheme. And the deadline to register is the 30th of June 2021. They have to meet this deadline, or they will become unlawful citizens if they don't register in time. The Home Office has said that late application may happen only if there are good reasons for the delay, and the Home Office thinks that they are acceptable, this reason. So we don't have guidelines. It's all under the discretion of the Home Office about the delays. And also the Home Office said they need to be reasonable. The reason they have to be good reason, but there has also to be a reasonable period for a late application. What to make an application? The application is done online, and it's not difficult to make an application if someone has got a smartphone, access to internet and Wi-Fi, has got a biometric passport, a valid biometric passport, has got proof of the residence in the UK before the 31st of December, an email, and a smartphone, a mobile phone number. And it would help also if you have a national insurance number, because it will the national insurance number will have to prove that there is a footprint of this person in the UK. With the status, EU citizens will be able to work. They will be able to use the NHS and to use benefits. Everyone in the family has to apply. So if there is a family of 4, mom, dad, and 2 children, and a newborn baby, maybe 5, all 5 have to apply, the newborn as well. And the idea of involving you and people like you are interested in helping EU citizens is because people can actually help, give information, spread information, spread the gospel, we say. But there are some points that you have to be aware. One is that immigration advice, as in the UK, is regulated. So to give advice to people on the EU settlement scheme, if there is not a friend or a family member, you generally will need to be regulated by either being an immigration lawyers, or being a OISC registered immigration advisor. Settled has got over 100 volunteers, and something like 100 are OISC level 1 limited to EUSS register. So we have the ability of advising people on their EUSS application. However, the Home Office has said very recently, just before Christmas, they updated the guidelines and decided that people who got dementia and other similar health conditions, have reduced mental capacity, can be helped by their carers. And I know that Sally will explain this and will go in further details. So I'm not going to spend much time, and I'll leave to Sally to give you all the details. Sally has done a brilliant work with us. Boundary of advice, we help Settle helps straightforward applications. So application that comes from EU citizens, and when we talk about EU citizens, we really mean EU, EEA, and Swiss citizens, and also their non-EEA family members. And we help them with straightforward applications. So applications that they don't have any complexity that would require an immigration lawyer. And when we talk about complexity, we pick up, for example, on confirmation of British nationality, complex EEA applications because they don't have maybe enough proof of their residence in the UK, or they don't have a valid ID. Application for on the basis of domestic grounds, domestic violence or Windrush scheme. We don't do any human rights ground or any judicial review. And we focus mainly on vulnerable EU citizens. So we help anyone, but we really try to concentrate our efforts to reach the most vulnerable. The Home Office has got a list of vulnerabilities, which included 7 vulnerabilities. We refer to the Migration Observatory report, and if you haven't read it, it's quite an interesting reading. And there, the vulnerabilities are a lot more than 7. We talk about not only about language barriers, but we talk also about IT barriers. For example, there's someone who hasn't got a smartphone, the right smartphone, because to apply, you have to use the right smartphone. It has to be an iPhone 7 Plus or an Android 6 and above. We work with migrant Roman communities where they go a kind of distrust on some of the messages from the Home Office, and we talk to them in their own language. We consider vulnerable also as maybe already a document, but not the right document. When I was saying about all the documents that have been issued under the EU laws, they will stop to be, well, they won't be valuable anymore from the 30th of June. They will need to have something to prove their status. So people who have got a permanent residence card that was issued under the EU laws will need to apply. Someone who has got a biometric residence card issued under the EEA laws will need to change it into a biometric residence card issue under the EU settlement scheme. But we also take care of children, senior EU citizens in care, homeless, and other vulnerability. We work with, for complex cases, for example, we refer to here for good for when we work with people that got criminal convictions, and we work with CABs across the UK. The application is simple, but many people have got questions to ask. And if Settle cannot answer to you, you should really go to the Home Office. The Home Office has got an outline that's called the Settlement Resolution Center. This is the number, and everyone can ring. At the moment, there is a waiting time around 45 minutes an hour, we've been told. People have to prove their residence. As I said, it's important that now that we are in the grace period, the proof that they arrived before the 31st of December 2020, but there are many documents that they can use to prove that they are eligible to the EU settlement scheme. The name on the documents is really important, that match the name on the document. So the name on the passport has to match the name on the documents that they submit. This sometimes can cause problems for married women who change names. So the Home Office is aware of this issue, and a marriage certificate is key to play the trick. As I was saying, the application is digital, everything is done online, and so is the status. You do not receive any card. You received an online status, which is linked in the cloud with your ID, the one that you used when you applied. And to view and prove your status, you have to go online. You have to insert your passport or ID number, your date of birth. Then you will receive either an SMS message on your mobile phone or an email. Then with a numeric code, you will add the numeric code into the website, and the website will give you a sharebook code you can give to a third person, a landlord or an employer, so they can view for 30 days your status. And having a digital status is creating frustration for some, because sometimes the system doesn't work or goes on tilt. And also it's not very user friendly, especially for the elderly and the most vulnerable people. So anyone who needs to prove their status, they will need to do the steps that I told you, go online and do it. The email that they receive from the Home Office has got a PDF attached, which is a certificate of application and a confirmation that they got a status. That letter is not proof of the status. The Home Office does say in the letter, this letter is not the proof of your status. But you find that now landlords and people who are starting asking, although they shouldn't because they should wait until the 1st of July, are asking for the letter and not for the code. They would rather see the letter which say this is not proof of your status. People are the common question that we find is that sometimes people are confused when they can apply for settled status, because actually if you've been here for less than 5 years, when you apply you will get pre-settled status. If you've been in the UK for longer than 5 years, you get settled status. Settled status is indefinite leave to remain. And as long as you don't leave the UK for longer than 5 years and you don't have criminal convictions, you will keep this status forever. With the pre-settled status, is a status that will allow you to live legally in the UK for 5 years, but within just before the end of the validity of the pre-settled status, you will have to change it and apply for settled status. So as soon as you clock your 5 years and before the end of the validity of the pre-settled status, you will need to apply for settled status. And people are asking us, when can I change from pre-settled to settled? When can I apply for settled status? And this is an example. So we say if someone has arrived, for example, if you know someone who arrived in 2017, like Maria, she arrived in 2019, and has applied recently. So in May 2020, she received a pre-settled status. She received a pre-settled status saying that you will be able to live in the UK until May 2025, but this pre-settled status is valid until May 2025. So Maria is asking to us, well, does it mean that I need to wait until May 2025 before I can change from pre-settled to settled? Because I arrived in 2019, so actually in April 2024, I would have clocked my 5 years. And this is a bit the confusion of this letter as arrived. It's not really clear. The Home Office doesn't make really clear that people, as soon as they get 5 years from the date that they arrive, they can apply for settled status, which is the gold status. The other things that people are asking us is about how calculating the absences, because when people are applying for settled status, they need to prove their continuous residence. And the Home Office says that you will break the continuous residence and you won't be able to apply for settled status if you are absent for 180 days, 6 months, basically, in any 12 months period. And people ask us, so what's the 12 months period? Is it a calendar year from January till December? And the answer is no. Is it from when I arrived? So I arrived in September. Does it go from September to September? And the answer is no. Is it from when I applied for pre-settled status? So if I arrived in September and applied in December, does it go from December to December? And the answer is no. The Home Office can choose any 12 months period within your 5 years. So you have to look at all your 5 years and look that you don't have 12 months, consecutive 12 months where you have had an absence or a lot of small absences that added up go and some more than 180 days. And although usually people will say 180 days is quite a lot to spend outside, with COVID, we found that many people have gone over just because maybe they were not working or working remotely or studying remotely, and they've been away for a long time and they broke their continuous residence. So we receive many questions about absences. And this is from me. I'll stop sharing and I'll go back to you, Joe.
Oh, sorry. Thanks a lot for that, Christina. So should we move straight on to Sally?
Thank you, Joe. Can you hear me okay? Brilliant.
Yeah.
Hello, and thank you for letting me speak today. I'm Dr. Sally Gilmour, a former general practitioner now working in old age psychiatry. And I'm concerned about both the elderly and adult Europeans with physical and mental health conditions that they may not apply for settled status by the deadline. And immigration lawyer Chris Desira and Christina from Settled with Age UK and myself, we've created some information for the Settled website, which specifically looks at elderly Europeans, gives some advice, and also a consent form to allow patients with dementia and people with other conditions to consent for someone else to help them. And it also looks at power of attorney, which I'll go into. So why am I concerned about this? Well, especially with elderly people, they may not realise that they need to apply because they may have been living in the UK for a long time and believe that they have an automatic right to stay. Secondly, like Christina said, not all, especially elderly people, will have internet access, and they may need support with their online application system and also continuing to maintain their settled status every 5 years online, especially if they're people living in a care home, for example. Some EU citizens, usually elderly, but some may be younger adults, may have specific conditions like dementia, stroke, learning disability, or sadly a brain injury after an accident. And because of their illness, they may not understand the meaning of current news. They may not understand COVID. They may not understand Brexit or settled status. And legally, this can be known as lacking mental capacity, where they cannot understand the meaning of settled status, so they would not know that they need to apply or would not understand how to apply. They're also not likely to have relevant paperwork or passports related to their illness. They may need a legal representative such as a relative or friend, perhaps with power of attorney, to support their application. They may need a solicitor or social worker to help them apply. And they may not be able to consent themselves to help. Other medical conditions can mean that even if people understand the need to apply for settled status, they also may have lost the paperwork, or they may not be motivated or physically able to do so. This can apply to many mental health problems, including depression, perhaps schizophrenia, perhaps people with hoarding disorder, perhaps people of any age with alcohol or drug disorders. And also we know that people who have a physical illness, such as cancer or serious pain conditions, that might mean that they really aren't motivated or physically able to apply by themselves. And we know that some EU citizens in this country may not have any relatives to support them, or relatives who also understand settled status. They may have no solicitor, no social worker, and they could be living in a care home or live on their own and be isolated. I was concerned about this in 2019, and I asked Sarah Wollaston MP to table a parliamentary question for me regarding this. And I think it's important I read the question and the answer, because in some ways it's reassuring, but in other ways I hope that it will support people in the future. The question was to the Secretary of State for the Home Department, asking what support is available for EU citizens with A, dementia, and B, other similar health conditions when applying for settled status, given the possibility that they may have lost the necessary paperwork. The reply was issued from the Home Office on the 31st of October 2019, before the COVID pandemic. The Home Office said the EU settlement scheme is designed to make it simple and straightforward for EU citizens and their family members to apply to stay in the UK after we leave the EU. We are looking for reasons to grant status, not reasons to refuse, and the scheme is performing well. The Home Office has put in place a comprehensive vulnerability strategy to ensure that the EU settlement scheme is accessible for all, including those requiring someone to make an application on their behalf. We are also engaging with relevant stakeholders, such as the Department for Health and Social Care, the Local Government Association, the Association of Directors of Adult Social Services, the devolved administrations, to assess the needs of vulnerable groups and ensure they are met. They said further, the Home Office has introduced a range of support for applicants, including assisted digital support at around 300 locations across the UK. And the EU Settlement Scheme Resolution Centre opens 7 days a week to provide help and information by telephone and email. We have also provided up to £9 million of grant funding to 57 voluntary and community organisations across the UK to enable them to mobilise services targeted at vulnerable EU citizens. Then the part of the answer which I'd specifically asked about. Regarding specific support for those with dementia and other similar health conditions, such as those without mental capacity, the Home Office has designed a scheme that allows applicants to consent to an appropriate third party to apply on their behalf. This means that caregivers, family members and friends can provide the necessary assistance to those who need it. The Home Office is aware that a range of vulnerable applicants may face challenges in securing evidence to support their application. For this reason, we will in such circumstances accept a range of evidence of identity and residence on behalf of an applicant working with the person making the application to establish the applicant's eligibility based on all the evidence available. Caseworkers are trained to exercise discretion in the applicant's favour where appropriate. So that answer is reassuring, I think, for my patients with dementia and mental health conditions. However, what it doesn't address is that there will be people who don't know they need to apply, and there will be people who won't have been supported to apply by their family and friends, maybe their care homes or care home managers. Most people in this country, even with chronic health conditions, don't have a social worker, and there's no national database to identify who needs to apply for settled status. We need to help all EU citizens to apply within the legislated timeframe to avoid any distress of a late application after the 30th of June this year. I've asked employees within social care and the NHS, and most don't know about settled status or its deadline, which is really worrying. In this country, we have 100,000 social workers, 1 million NHS employees, 21,000 care homes and 6 million carers. We need to ensure that all these people who care know about the settled scheme, know about the deadline, so that they can help their isolated and vulnerable European clients. Next week, the 23rd of March, there will be 100 days left till the settled status deadline. So please, if you're listening this evening and you know anyone who can help publicise this in the media locally and nationally, and in organisations for care at home, care homes, councils, medical organisations, please do help publicise. And really, I think at this stage, we need a local and a national campaign to ask, does your grandparent, your aunt, your uncle, or somebody that you look after in a care home, someone you know in a care home, or maybe somebody that you care for at home, do they need to apply for European settled status? Thank you very much for the opportunity to share that this evening.
Thanks, Sally. Up next is Mark, who works with the 3 million.
Okay, thank you very much, Joe, and thank you to Sally and Christina for highlighting some really urgent and critical issues facing some European citizens in the UK currently. I do have some slides that I would like to share with you. Just need to okay, can everyone see that now?
Yes.
Yeah, we can see that. Okay. Okay, so really I just want to talk through some of the campaigns and the activities that the 3 million are undertaking at the moment. And there's 3 campaigns in particular that I want to touch on. And one of those is the Drop the Letter campaign that Joe spoke about in his introduction. And then I also want to briefly mention Denied My Backup campaign and a new campaign called Our Home, Our Vote. But most of what I'm going to say is focusing on the theme of the evening, which is the forthcoming deadline for the EU settlement scheme and what we can do to make sure that nobody gets missed out. So just to give some context before I talk about the campaigns, I just want to talk about a report that the 3 million recently submitted that really kind of pulls together some of the kind of urgent issues currently. As we've already touched on the 31st of December, the transition period ended and the withdrawal agreement was activated, and the withdrawal agreement essentially sets out agreement between the UK and the European Union in terms of citizens' rights in the UK. So the Independent Monitoring Authority is a body that was set up to ensure that public bodies uphold the rights that are protected in the withdrawal agreement. So the 3 million in February this year submitted a report to the Independent Monitoring Authority setting out the issues for EU citizens in acquiring and enforcing these rights. And the report also made a number of recommendations. So 3 key areas of concern that it highlighted was focusing on really 3 different groups of EU citizens in relation to the scheme. So the 3 key areas of concern are those who haven't applied to the EU settlement scheme, those who have applied but are awaiting a grant of status, and the issues actually facing people that have already been granted either pre-settled or settled status. So in terms of those who have not applied to the EU settlement scheme, as Sally just touched on, I think, the numbers of people that need to apply is actually something that is not known, because there was never any system that required people to register that they were an EU citizen within the UK. In addition to that, the EU settlement scheme is a kind of national scheme, and there's no scheme of its kind that has ever really met 100% of its target. So as a result of that, there could really be thousands or many thousands of EU citizens left without lawful status from July this year. Now, an example of this is the rollout some years ago of digital TV, and that was supposedly met 97% of its target. So if we were to kind of apply that to the EU settlement scheme, and 97% of the people that need to apply, we could still be looking at numbers in the hundreds of thousands that are left without a status in July this year. And Sally and Christina have spoken in some detail about some of the categories of people that might be particularly at risk of not knowing they need to apply. So this includes parents knowing that they need to apply for their children, people that have been in the UK for a very long time and just don't think that they need to apply, people that formerly held permanent resident status that is now no longer valid. There's also people that might just not apply for fear of being rejected, or people that might think they're not eligible when they actually are. And then commonly people might assume that if they're married to a British citizen that they do not need to apply. And as Sally has just spoken about in detail, another area of concern is older people, people with specific disabilities, and a number of other vulnerable groups. So another group that is of concern are those that they do know they need to apply, but they're actually struggling to do so. And again, this has already been touched on by Christina and Sally, but COVID pandemic has had an impact on the availability of the support available. And in some instances, people need to actually attend what are called scanning locations to get their documents scanned, particularly if they can't access the app, or they don't have a document that's scannable by the app. But a lot of those scanning locations have been periodically closed while since the start of the pandemic. Another issue is the complexity of the immigration rules, which can be very complicated for people to understand. And in fact, I've heard many immigration lawyers saying that the immigration rules are amongst the most complex area of law that they have come across. So Christina cited an example of the rules around absences and how that can affect people's entitlement to, for example, apply for settled status when they already have pre-settled status. There's problems with the actual application process itself in terms of the identity scanning app not always working. And again, we've mentioned vulnerable groups of people. Because of that vulnerability, that might make it very difficult for them to apply. So in that sense, one of the things that the 3 million have developed is a report form, which people can use to report to us problems that they are having with applying to the settlement scheme. And a lot of the things I talk about today that you can do in terms of letting people know about this form if you come across people that are struggling to apply. I'm going to post a document in the chat later with a number of different links so you can see that form for yourself and share it with people. So on to the main campaign that Joe mentioned at the start. So we've launched a campaign in February called Drop the Letter. And this really is focusing on the group of people I spoke to that we were concerned about that have not yet applied to the EU settlement scheme. So the idea for this is that we want every council in the UK to write to every household within their boundaries about the EU settlement scheme and the deadline of the 30th of June to make those applications. So what we're asking people to do with this campaign is to write to their local councillors and to raise questions at their local council meetings. And that's both to kind of directly ask them, can you write to every household in your area? But also to kind of ask questions about what they're doing to raise awareness in general and to encourage them to really kind of like step up their efforts to raise awareness within their council area. So the campaign was really inspired by Brighton and Hove Council, who have already done this. They wrote to every household in their area in November 2020. And that is one of the things that inspired us to launch this campaign. And you can see there's an example of the postcard that Brighton and Hove sent out. And since then as well, also councils in Cambridge and Boston and also Kingston upon Thames have sent out information to their with their council tax bills this year. So that would have reached a number of households, which has been quite a positive outcome from the campaign. And as I say, I will post a link in a document later on, so you can see all the links to that campaign and you can take part in that. So another area of concern, as I said, was about those who have applied but are still awaiting for their grant of status. And again, Christina touched on this earlier. So those people that have applied but still haven't got their status, still haven't got their proof of that, are likely to be experiencing difficulties with proving their right to work, their right to rent, and potentially accessing healthcare. And you can see on that slide there as well some examples of how long people have been waiting from submitting an application to actually getting their grant of status. And you can see that there are some people that have been waiting for longer than a year. And then, you know, over 32,000 that had been waiting between 6 months and a year. So clearly that would cause a great deal of anxiety for people in that situation if they're waiting for that long for an outcome of their application. So that brings me on to the Denied My Backup campaign. Now, this was a campaign that we was running in a kind of campaigning phase, I guess, in the latter half of last year, where there was a amendment that was going to be voted on as part of the new immigration bill, which would have given the EU citizens that have been granted a status a physical document in addition to the digital only status that that applies at the moment and that Christina spoke about in her presentation. Now, unfortunately, that amendment was voted down and it didn't become part of the immigration bill. So it remains the case that there's no physical document for EU citizens that have been granted status. And again, Christina spoke about this earlier, but this is, you know, causing problems both for citizens and the bodies that they need to prove their status to. So it's an inconvenient process going through the digital proof process for employers and for landlords. And the concern really is that that can lead to discrimination. We're getting evidence that it's already causing problems for people traveling back to the UK, for people making job applications. So for example, there's been job applications that we've seen where job adverts, sorry, we've seen where it's actually stated in the advert that it's a requirement to prove that people have status. There's also people that are digitally excluded, problems with having no internet available. The actual settled status service itself sometimes goes down and is unavailable. And there can be other technical glitches as well. So another thing that the 3 million have developed is another reporting form. So alongside the reporting form to report problems with actually applying for status, there's also a form that people can fill in on the 3 million website, which where they can report problems with actually approving their status using the digital system. And that report form and the one for problems with applications has been translated into 16 different languages. So in addition to this, another action that the 3 million are undertaking at the moment is a court case, and that is a challenge to the government that's being brought about on the grounds that the digital only status is discriminatory, and in particular for more vulnerable members of our society. And those would include the groups that Sally spoke about earlier. Sorry, skipped ahead there. So again, there's a, I will post a link to this, but there is a fundraiser currently to support that legal challenge on the I've forgotten what it's called now. There's a fundraiser for justice cases, and I will post a link to that later. It's crowd justice, sorry, that's what it is. Okay, so finally, if I can just touch on a new campaign that was launched recently, and this was launched by the Young Europeans Network within the 3 million. And this is focusing on the forthcoming local elections. So EU citizens can vote in this election on the 6th of May, but many are not aware that they can. And in fact, 1 in 2 are not registered to vote. So the Young Europeans Network have launched this campaign to encourage EU citizens to register to vote. There is a particular focus on younger people. There's also, as part of the campaign, they're providing information about how to vote by post during the pandemic. There's an opportunity for people, the Young Europeans Network is a team for 16 to 30-year-olds, and there is an opportunity for people that are 16 to 30 to become more involved by joining the Young European Network as a volunteer. And as part of the campaign as well, the Young Europeans Network are looking for people to send in short videos of themselves saying who they are and where they are and why they care about voting, as part of just encouraging people to vote in those elections. it does have some funding, that campaign does, and it's the funding is around targeting in particular 3 areas where there is a particular concern about people being registered to vote, and those are Corby, Northampton and Peterborough. So we are in particular looking for people to kind of like help out that might have connections in those areas. So just to sum up then, in terms of things that you can do, I'll just recap over those campaigns and current activities from the 3 million. So the Drop the Letter campaign, what you can do is ask for the issue to be raised at the next council meeting and write to your local councillor. On the web page that we've developed, there's also an opportunity for you to tell us about which council you've contacted and any replies that you receive. And we've also developed a set of frequently asked questions so that you can manage any responses that you get. So if you get a response and it's not particularly favourable, or it's not really getting the council to commit to doing anything that we're asking for, then there's a frequently asked questions page that you can have a look at to help you draft a response to your council. So we've also got the Our Home, Our Vote campaign, which is encouraging young people and EU citizens to register to vote. And within that, as well, as I just said, you can, we're also encouraging people to record a video and explain why they care about voting. What you can do in terms of the Denied My Backup activities is to let people know about the report form that I spoke about, and that's the report form for proving status, as well as the report form for applying for status. So if we can let employers, EU citizens groups, sharing in Facebook groups, that kind of thing, just to make that form widely known so that it can be used to gather information. And on Deny My Backup as well, you can also support our crowd justice appeal. And finally, you can also volunteer for the 3 Million campaign team or the Young Europeans Network. And again, there will be web links for you to be able to do that posted in the document I'll put into the chat. Within that document as well, there's also some links so that you can follow the 3 Million on Twitter and like the Facebook page and subscribe to the YouTube channel. So that is just a summary of all the things that you can actually do actively currently in relation to EU citizens' rights in the UK. And that's me. Thank you.
Thanks, Mark. Up next is Edmund from Swansea for Europe.
Okay, just a minute. Let me get my slide up. Yeah, sorry, got a few more slides. What's happening? Yeah, okay. Yes, sorry, just a second.
Yeah, no worries.
Okay.
The screen seems to, so yeah.
Hopefully you're seeing that. Let me just put. Sorry, hang on. My presenter view. Yeah, okay. Yeah, well, as you see from this, I've just got to give a brief summary of this, and as we're kind of run on a bit, I'll try and be very quick, so you have a chance to ask questions. But from all the previous presentations, you're aware of the issues, and I was, aware to a little extent over a month or so ago. Well, I've been aware for quite a while, but about a month or so ago, I was thinking about the census and something to that. And then I realized the day after the census, it's 100 days, as Sally mentioned earlier. And I thought, well, maybe we should try and do something in the run up to the census. So this all got put together in a hurry, and Joe came in and helped me. And we basically got images and text in for all the countries, and sort of doing a countdown from the 28 days with it featuring a different country every day. And so basically we prepared the image like that with a sort of common graphic and saying, do you know citizens from this particular country? So as to try and encourage people then to maybe think of, someone they knew from that country and pass that on to them. And well, you know, as people mentioned earlier, the more you look into this, the more sort of minor complexities there are. And, you know, I find it even confusing. Why do people keep saying EU, EEA, and Switzerland? If you say EU and EFTA, that covers them all, because there are the 4 EFTA countries, which are Iceland, Norway, Liechtenstein, and Switzerland. And then there are the 27 EU ones. And coming from Ireland, the people say, oh, well, it's not relevant for Ireland, but it is, in fact, maybe relevant for some Irish citizens if they have family members that are from non-EU countries, because I think my understanding is, say, an Irish citizen would probably quite easily get settled status, and then one of their dependents could not be awarded a lower status if I think there's something like that. But anyway, you know, again, it's not necessarily totally irrelevant for Irish citizens. But what we've done over the past couple of weeks, we've covered 30 countries. Well, we'll be finishing on Saturday with our 30th country, and that's a sort of summary of all the, with a lot of assistance from volunteers and our graphic designer. We got translations for, I was totting them up, 26 different languages. And basically, if you're in any of the pro-European groups that want to use any of these materials to sort of put together your own posters or postcards, or just to share them on social media, you can get in touch. So, you know, part of this, the whole idea of this was to raise awareness amongst the volunteer groups so that people can, you know, if they're aware of it, and then if you happen to know, you know, like I have a local Portuguese who supplies, you know, Portuguese cakes and stuff. And I've been keeping on at him, and he said, oh, you know, my passport's run out and I can't renew it because of COVID. And I said, well, no, you have to take action and do something. So the last time he told me he has renewed his passport. So I'm hoping I have to keep pestering him to make sure he's doing it, or, you know, just to at least make sure he's aware that it is important to do something about it. And again, I think these sort of been mentioned, but I've prepared a poster to highlight these 2 issues that, as was mentioned, you know, there may be people who are even working in universities and, you know, actually quite IT savvy, who think, oh, well, I've got a permanent residence card, I don't need to worry about it. But in fact, those won't be valid after 30th of June. So, you know, people should double check that they are, you know, are their status is assured after the 30th. And again, the thing with dependent family members, and I mean, I have a question for Christina later as to what happens to couples who have a child born in this 6-month grace period, or even after the grace period, but maybe that's again complexity. But again, the dependents who have a non-EU nationality, they would, as Christina I think mentioned, they would also need to apply. And anyway, just as I say, we've been doing this on Facebook and Twitter for the last 3, almost 4 weeks now. On this coming Monday, we're going to have a sort of campaign just to try and keep retweeting, reposting all of these images through the day. And if any groups want to, you know, get access to the images, well, I think Joe can probably put the link on the chat thereafter, but they're available for you to use, or you can look out for the Swansea for Europe and Manchester for Europe Facebook and Twitter, and just retweet or repost. And we just thought if we keep doing them all in one day, you know, it might raise get some attention from some people. And I've also drafted a poster at the moment, which I'm planning to put on our, you know, local community notice board here in where I live, and maybe ask some local shops to display it as well, which just is targeted at, you know, UK citizens, do you know anyone, or at EU citizens, you know, are you aware of of the deadline and that you may need to apply? And again, that's the sort of draft version of the poster there. And again, if anyone would be interested in having a copy of that when it's finalized. So again, I'll probably be issuing that or making that available next week, and probably put it on the same location as the, you know, where the other images and stuff are. So again, it's just trying to do my little bit to make awareness. And, you know, as I said at the start of this, if it just reaches 1 or 2 people, I'll feel it's all been worth it, you know, making 1 or 2, because a lot of families must be going through a lot of grief with all of this, with on top of the COVID pandemic, having the uncertainties about their future, whether they can continue living, you know, where they've been. And I think, yeah, there was one email response back when we started this by someone who's a grandfather and lived here nearly all his life, and he suddenly realized he had to apply and now is stuck in this limbo of waiting for the result of his application. So I'll stop there and